famous mop.
Eyes snapped open to see Navia staring at me. Not Navia. The demon. Her eyes had turned jet black, burned with hatred as she stared at me from her sunken pits, and a serrated tail lashed at the air as she hunched over, wings fanned out to obscure the sanctum. "What happened?" yelled Damaris, falling back. "What changed?" My love infuriated the demon. Sanctum. "Navia!" Her tail flashed forth and wrapped around Damaris's waist. For I remembered. Navia screamed, hunching over and throwing her clawed hands out wide. then drew morgothelium from her room, the foot-long bladed tip slamming into Damaris's ward with such power that cracks spiderwebbed across its surface. A mere moment later, she brought morgothelium down upon the upper curvature of the sphere. I yelled, threw up my arm in an instinctual attempt to block the impossible, only to see the blade cut into the ward, and then slowly stop. Sparks of lavender flame rained down upon us, as possibly powerful and hold the ward for itself. Navi was now a third of the way through the ward, radiating terrible menace above us as it continued to inch down. "Hurry!" shouted Damaris. Now I heard strain as she raised both hands to project her power forth. Of course, wards were the projection of one's sense of worth, of self-love. And for Damaris, Navia represented her greatest mistake. No time. I closed my eyes, inhaled deeply, focused on the Vam mantra as I tried to puzzle out where we'd gone wrong. She lost control when I projected my love for her. I thought again of the Navia I loved, her tall, slender frame, her wry smile, her... the old Navia, which she no longer was. What she was trying to evolve from. My love had been a slap in her face, the worst form of a sucker punch. I opened my eyes. What I had to do now... Openly, I moved forward to the edge of the ward itself. "Get back!" cried Damaris. "I can't hold her back much longer!" Navia, I thought again. But this time I stared into the demon's pitch-black eyes and took in Navia's face, human and beautiful, even with the black veins spidering their way from her jawline and temple across her skin, and the mass of ropey dreadlocks hanging about her head like a lion's mane. I stared at the creature before me, and opened my heart to it, opened my arms, and stepped forth, out of the ward. "I love you," I said. And where before in the manifold I projected those words to the Navia lost within the demon, had reached down to the woman who lost control, whom I needed to emerge to save us both. This time, I said it to the demon before me. I projected that love, that fierce, terrible, terrifying love out at it. And in my heart and mind's eye, I accepted Navia for what she was, what she'd become, what her trials and losses and corruption and betrayals had made her. I love you, Navia, all of you. The chime quelled the demon's screams, stilling its attacks. Without the same, and it stared at me with eyes like black holes, stared at me with a mixture of incredulity and rage, disbelief and emotion so alien I couldn't hope to understand them. I love you, Navia. I won't hide from you. I love your past and your future. I love your great strength and all of your weaknesses. I love you in your human guise and in this one. She hunched over and screamed at me again. The sound of a blow. The violence of the sound causing me to narrow my eyes as my hair streamed back. But I refused to retreat. She drew herself up, angled morgothelium at my breast, and dove at me. "Noah!" screamed Damaris, but I didn't move, didn't flinch. Simply stared at her as the blade came lancing down as it had done before in her trial. But this time it stopped just short of piercing my breast. Navia in her demon form loomed above me, but now she grew quiet, her tail stilling, the beats of her wings growing slow. Her expression was one of confusion and uncertainty. I floated up, past her blade, up close to where she flew, and reached out to touch her mottled cheek with my palm. My fingertips caressed the chitinous ridges of the scales that framed her face. She flinched and drew back. I followed. "Navia," I whispered, "can you hear me?" And in those dread black eyes, I saw a glimmer of humanity. "I love you," I said again. And heart thundering like a herd of mustangs crossing the plain, I leaned in and kissed her coral lips. That great chime sounded once more, and golden light flooded out from where we floated, scouring away the corruption that had begun to stream from her demonic form. ashing it and disintegrating it everywhere. In the distance, I thought I heard something screech, a high-pitched, almost inaudible register of sheer hatred and fury. But my thoughts, my whole being was focused on Nadia, on her soft lips, on kissing her with my heart and soul. I love you, I whispered when I finally drew back, gazing into her demonic black eyes once more. And I love you, she whispered back. And it was Navia's voice that I heard, even though it issued from those coral pink lips, from her demonic visage. I love you more than I can ever say. I pressed my lips to her own again, and only then did I understand what had finally happened. Only then did my heart surge. I squeezed her tight, pulled her into a warm embrace. I kissed her fully, arms wrapping around her leathery shoulders, the base of her wings, feeling but not caring as her clawed hands embraced me in turn. We'd done it. She laughed when I broke the kiss, and together we turned to her mother, who floated up to join us. I'm so proud of you, said Damaris, reaching out to touch her shoulder. To truly accept yourself is more than most can dream of doing. Thank you, Mother, said Navia. And you are a worthy partner for me, continued Damaris, turning to me with a complex smile. I find that after all these years, I understand the world and universe less and less. But your love for my daughter is true, and I believe in my core that it will be crucial in defeating both. My blessings upon you, Noah. My blessings upon you both. Thank you, I said, feeling awed, expansive, exultant. I must find Mother now, said Damaris, floating back. Much needs to be discussed. I may not be in the cottage when you emerge, but know that as far as I am concerned, you are welcome there for as long as you wish to stay. And if I don't see you soon, I know that I will see you both before the end. Goodbye, my mother. Goodbye, my mother. With that, she disappeared. I turned back to Navia, who yet remained in her demonic form, her great wings beating, her body at once alone and fatigued. But one thing had changed. Her eyes. They were Navia's once more. Her large, aching blue eyes ringed with greed. I love you, I whispered again. Even if I look like this. I took my time looking her up and down, making a show of it. Her taloned feet, to her long, muscled legs, to her broad hips, her defined core, her protruding ribs, her high breasts, her whole body. I couldn't tell what was her flesh, what was armor, or whether there was even a difference. But finally, I met her eyes once more, and nodded slowly, decisively. Yes. Tears welled in her eyes again, and she shook her head. I don't know what to say. How do you feel? Inside. I feel hollow. No. Light. She frowned as she considered the question. A great tension is gone. Something I'd not noticed before. A weight that I'd grown used to. I feel clear and more with you. She considered the demon blade. Its length shimmered with iridescence, and I thought I caught a hint of fear, of uncertainty from it. It no longer masters me. I could snap it over my knee if I wished, discard it, destroy it. But she sliced the blade languidly through the air, and I find that I am grown used to it, fond of it, since it no longer has a hold on me. Perhaps I should now use it as I see fit. And she opened her taloned hand, and her dread demon blade did disappear. Gone? I asked, until I summoned it. We held each other's gaze once more, slowly revolving within her sanctum. No, she said at last. I never thought that any of this was possible. I wanted to speak, but she raised her hand, cutting me off. But only now do I understand myself. The creature I became after losing Yolanda. The creature I let Lilith turn into. I've been half a woman, mutilated soul. I understand now, at long last, the only power that Lilith has over any of us is that which we give her. Her spells, her hex and magic, and that of her servants. None of it can affect us unless we allow it. I nodded soberly. What happened to me on that altar? With mortal feeling. On some level, I felt I deserved it. Thus she was able to enslave me. And ever since, I've spent every moment fighting to repress the guilt and shame I knew I deserved. An impossible battle which consumed almost every ounce of my strength. Now that the fight is over. Now, she smiled, revealing fangs. Now my strength is my own once more. You said she finished. It elongated, ceased to be a nacre sphere, and rose into a great my own, different. The petals greener, more slender. Beside us, the black sun of Manipura appeared, its static rays of bronze slowly spinning about its dark heart. Above our heads, an ahanta manifested, glorious in its emerald hues. Higher still, a purple sanskara appeared, a circular orb flanked by 2 wings. At the very last, high above and placed on an altar of glory, 1,000-petaled sanskara opened, its center a smooth myself. If I stared too deeply, sanskara was on my chest. She is not now that you've liberated me. And in that moment, something intangible changed between us. Suffused the me return. I watched, mesmerized, as she floated down before me, hand cupping my crotch. Her beautiful face upturned to mine made her whole self still so alien, so terrifyingly powerful and different. Her wings folded themselves back upon her back, and she ran a single talon down the length of my cock, where it strained beneath the fabric of my drawstring pants. It was the lightest of pressures that near snapped my self-control. Had I even been wearing clothing a second or so ago? Part of me wondered. Then the thought was gone. The sight of Naviya before me, her lips glistening as she studied me, her even in this guise, even in this deadly form, a vision that I'd come to associate with death and horror. I meant it when I said I love you, I said, and that was enough for her. Her talon cut through the fabric of my pants, which faded away. Descent. Moving with abandon and growling deep in her throat, and she stood in her sanctum, spit down, cupped her chin, and drew her to a perfect ass. Her appearance had changed, but now, fuck it. Holding on to her narrow waist, I pushed the head of my cock between her smooth lips, which were shaded dark purple, impossibly demonic in hue. With a sigh of satisfaction, I pushed in deep. Naviya arched her back, and I saw that each vertebra was prominent. Saw the contours of her pronounced ribs, the downward sweep of her back muscles, her wings spreading out wide as I began to pound her. Wanting more traction, I grabbed hold of the base of her wings and leaned back, sliding in over and over again as she began to cry out, each impact of my hips sending shivers up her ass. I watched, fascinated, and she fucked me right back, bucking her hips away and back into mine. Each time I withdrew, I saw her pussy lips cling to my cock. My mind was spinning. The sight of Naviya in her demon form doing a number to my sense of reality. Her body was supple and impossibly strong, muscles rippling as she fucked me back, her pussy hot, slick, and squeezing me tightly like a fist. Her cries were growing louder, and all around us a yellow light was beginning to burn bright within me. Around me, I felt Svadhisthana roaring to life. "Match me," she said, and her eyes were wide and burning with fire. Then I realized her cheekbones. Her legs tightened around me with incredible strength, and I felt the bones of my pelvis begin to grind, shuddering under her strength. I immediately channeled Manipura, drank deep of the Black Sun's power. My body surged with a strength all of my own. I laughed, clasped her by one broad hip, and reached down to palm one of her breasts. Her laughter joined my own. With a beat of her wings, she threw us both across the sanctum to crash into the wall. What would have if I'd not erected my ward at the last moment, cushioning what would have otherwise been a bone-shattering impact. Navia's eyes were alive with fire and desire, a provocative light that was half defiance, half challenge. Her tongue slipped out, longer than any human tongue, to lick her coral pink lips as she pressed me back against the wall with her hips, grinding against me with enough force to shatter a rock. Well, this wasn't my first day at school either. Drinking deep of Manipura, opening myself completely to its roaring power, I felt my spirit body grow taut with power. With a surge, I flew forward, pushing her back, driving her through the air. She hissed, reached for my neck, and I caught her clawed hand inches from my throat. It was like trying to wrestle down a force of nature. Her fingers flexed, talons just shy of my neck. Still, I drove her back, faster and faster, until we impacted against the far wall. Cracks radiated out from behind her, and she disdained summoning her ward. With my other hand, I pinned her by the neck to the wall, leaning in with all my might to keep her fixed as I fucked her. Each pistoning of my hips channeled Manipura's might. Her laughter spiraled up, half crazed. And with a supple flexion of her whole body, she shoved us both away from the wall, into the center of her sanctum. We spun, revolving ever faster as I lost myself in the glory of making love to her. The whole world contracting to where our bodies touched. Harder and faster we fucked, her wings closing around us, cocooning us in darkness. Her cries, her pants filled my world, until neither of us could hold back any longer. I came thunderously deep within her as she screamed. Her back arched, her breasts pointing up toward the ceiling as her body writhed and was racked by an orgasm of her own. Light blazed forth from around us, blinding me, and for a long, aching forever, I was battered upon huge waves of pleasure, lost at sea, till at last, my vision returned to me. Navia was her human self once more, naked, with her legs yet locked around my waist. Her black, lustrous hair spread out about her, as if we were truly underwater, her chest rising and falling as she caught her breath. Her body gleaming with light, as if she were illuminated from within. No one knows. We locked eyes, and caught still very deep within her. I felt such a surge of victory, of hope, of love. And at that moment, I felt invincible, ready for anything, and knew that Lilith was what I truly followed. Chapter 15. Used Amuza's token to open a portal back to Urugara upon returning to the room. Together we'd stood in the grassy sward before the wooden cottage, and for long, silent moments, I'd waited to see if Navia would want to say goodbye. "You best be leaving now," she said at last, turning away. "There's nothing left to be said." "Good." I rested my hand on Sharp's palm, and I want to get back to Valeria as quickly as possible. "Ready?" A decisive nod from Navia, and I activated the token. A swirling portal of black magic appeared before us. Without hesitation, we stepped through. A moment of disorientation passed, and we emerged, not into Aluza's bedroom, but directly into Emilias's guest suite. I don't know why that threw me off. Of course, Aluz could direct her portals to where she will. It was arrogant to think she'd be available to receive us at any hour of the day or night. But it A chill went down my spine nonetheless. My sense of foreboding was only exacerbated when I saw my companions leap to their feet at the sight of me, faces registering fear, anger, and relief. "What is it?" I asked, heart rate immediately beginning to pound. "Valeria," said Emma, her voice tight with emotion. "They've taken her." "Taken her?" The words didn't register. Had no meaning at first. "What the fuck are you talking about?" Imogen was pale, collected, and clearly livid. "Duplicity. When Brielle and I went to take our shift, we were transported elsewhere, while Emma and Little Meow were brought back here." Fury simmered in Brielle's eyes. "Elias is permanently unavailable, and not in the building. We went to the palace to get answers, but were denied access. I was about to start killing people when a Marathi diplomat came out. He said Valeria's condition had worsened, and that Morgana had her transported to Tantagrast, where she'll await us by the phone." Tantagrast? My mind was reeling. Only 10 minutes ago I'd been lost in the utter bliss of fucking Livia in her demonic form. And now suddenly I was being forced to deal with this tragedy. "You're kidding me. It doesn't make any sense," said Brielle, finishing my sentence for me. "Of course not! It was a ruse. It must have been. To get you away, to distract you, and then steal Valeria." "But why?" He moved over to a chair and sat, feeling dazed. "Why go to such lengths? I mean, Morgana could have just let her die, or think, Noah." Imogen moved to crouch before me, hands light on my knees. "We've already established that Lilith doesn't want to simply kill us. Ever since Brielle's trial back in Bastion, she's been looking to corrupt us." "She wants Valeria," I said, piecing it together. "She's going to wake her up. Alone, crippled, and without us there to tell her the truth." Silence was my only answer. I groaned, stood up, began to pace. Fuck. And she's going to be at her weakest. They're going to turn her against us. There's nothing we can do about it. "We have to reach her," said Navia quietly. "And fast." "Her aperture," I said. "Perhaps I can speak to her there. Hold on." I dropped to sit cross-legged on the floor, placed my hands on my knees, and sank deep into my reservoir, down the length of my golden filament, to where the 5 apertures hung suspended in the darkness. I trained my attention on Valeria's portal and flew to it. Something felt off. I extended my hand and willed the aperture to open. It didn't move. Frowning, I poured more energy into the desire, the command, visualized it irising before my hand, giving me access to Valeria within. Nothing. I don't know how long I struggled with the aperture to let light. "And?" asked Emma. "Nothing. It won't open. I can't reach her." "Not good," said Imogen. I began to pace. "What does that mean?" asked Emma, looking from her to me. Imogen reached the far wall, turned, and strode back. "That Lilith has somehow managed to interpose herself between Noah and Valeria, which should be impossible, given their sacred bond. A bond forged by the Source during the 5 trials." We stared at each other in silence. Misery followed. Emma turned at last to Navia. "So, you guys, success?" "Success," said Navia, with surprising warmth. And then she smiled, which underscored the depth of the change. "I am at peace with myself, and my demon no longer taxes my reserves. I'm ready to bring the battle to Earth." "Well, that's some good news," said Emma. "Even so, it'll take us weeks to reach Tantagrast. We can portal back to Calistria, but then we still have to get through Carcosa, and then on to Nadalar, and Gizel." Frustration arose within me. With a cry of rage, I swept my arm through the air, dragging an 11 bolt as thick as my thigh across the wall. Tiles, brick, and potted ferns exploded in a shattering roar, leaving a ragged trench several feet thick in its wake. I rolled my hands into fists. I hate these people, their games, their manipulations. tired of this bullshit. Even with Navia, it's gonna take us time to reach the fulcrum. And every second we're delayed is another that Valeria's alone with their lies and poison. I pushed the base of both palms into my eyes. I just stood there, reeling. I thought of Valeria awakening alone. The shock and horror she'd feel when she saw her stumps. The lies that would be told to her right after. They'd tell her she'd been abandoned. That she was useless now. That I'd chosen to ditch her and press on. Oh, God. She'd eat those lies right up. They'd feed right into her greatest weaknesses and doubts. What'll they do to her? I turned her toward her, said Navia. Emma passed her hand over her mouth, face growing pale. That was your card, wasn't it? The one Shalara drew? The Lilith card? I thought that was her challenge back from Goheel, I said, wild despair opening its wings of panic in my throat. That she'd fallen as the Black Paladin program. When it overcome her temptation. A time will come, recited Imogen, tone solemn, repeating Shalara's words. When Valeria feels devoid of all hope, powerless against that which confronts you, controlled even by external forces, a nadir in which she is beset by the worst of her fears. And she may come to believe she has no choice but to bend the knee to Lilith and bow her head. She can't, he said, needing to believe my words. She won't. They'll have weeks to work on her, said Emma, and then sank uncertainly to a chair. She's at her weakest. A dangerous fury was building up within me again. I felt like a thunderhead, filled to bursting with power and iron, ready to destroy all that lay before me. But I held the rage within me. I wanted to destroy this chamber, to lash out like a petulant child. You have to leave now, said Brielle softly. You have to hurry. Even a day saved can make a difference. Could we? This might be a stupid idea, said Little Meow from where she'd been standing to one side. Could we storm the palace? Find Morgana? Force her to return Valeria? No, said Imogen. There's simply too many of them. And they'll be ready for such an attack. Unless we came up with some kind of deception. A trick, said Emma. We could ask to talk to her, negotiate a return or something. An exchange. Pretend we'll give them, I don't know, a shard or whatever. Would bring them to the table. No, I said. And my voice rang out with final authority. We're not negotiating with them. We're not lying. We're not playing their games any longer. Agreed, said Brielle. Navia is with us again. I say we storm these realms, cut our way through our enemies. Nor that, I said. I felt punch-drunk, my thoughts unable to settle, to grow still. But certainty was filling me. We're done. We're gonna take control of this shit show. How? Asked Imogen. I approve of the sentiment, but... Grab your packs. Follow me. And I hitched my own higher up my shoulders and turned toward the pool room's double doors. Marched toward them. And at the last, let slip Muladhara's fury. So that 11 bolts blasted both doors clear off their hinges and sent them crashing into the hall beyond. Panicked faces, the sound of people running away. I ignored them, strode into the hall, and made my way to the front door. And there found Isosa, clad in a black ball gown that hugged her feminine frame. Her black hair pulled back into an elaborate confection of pins and gleaming clasps. The portal to Aegeria awaits you in the great ritual hall, she said. Though her voice was calm, I could sense her fear, see it in how wide her eyes were. When you are ready, I ignored her completely, drew shard, and in that very motion unleashed an arcing flame of golden light that detonated against the iron doors, each twice as tall as I was. A second swipe, and a triangular segment in their center wobbled, wavered, and then fell outward into the street with a resounding boom. Isosa opened and shut her mouth, helpless, as I walked past her and outside into the cold light of dawn. Emilias's manor was built high on a ridge facing the heart of Urgara, with rivers of roiling clouds slowly pouring below us, cutting the ridge off from the main city. I gazed with cold hatred upon that segmented mass of wall. The endless courts cut off from each other by portcullises and battlements. A city designed to endlessly withstand siege, to disorient, to befuddle any attacking force. "You are mad if you think to fight your way through to the palace," said Isusa to the side. "It would take you years. You'd have to fight 1,000 Marathi to do so. Admit it, Savior. You have no choice but to go through our port. Aegeria and Talisria await. Don't spend your energies here. Save them for your trials. Come with me, and I shall escort you to the port, where you can continue your test with honor." I turned and pointed Shard at Isusa's perilously beautiful face. "If you ever dare to speak that word in my presence again, I shall cut your tongue from your mouth. Do you understand?" Isusa faltered and stepped back, a hand rising to clasp her own throat. I turned back to Urugara. But this time, I lifted my eyes from the morass of battlements and production zones and traced the rise of the black smoke that billowed forth from 1,000 smithies to inspect the palace tower. And there, hovering serenely beside a large archway set in the tower itself, secured by thin filaments, and looking as alien and majestic as anything I'd ever seen, was the Druid airship. "Via," I said without turning around, "your mastery of Manipura allows you to fly now?" "Yes," she said simply. "Can you carry little Meow and Emma?" "For a while, surely." "Then I have a plan." "What is it?" asked Imogen, moving up alongside me. "I can't tell you. Folks could be listening. We don't have time to go to my reservoir." "It'd be best if we could," began Imogen. I raised a hand, cutting her off. "I have a plan. That's what we're going to do. You trust me, do you do?" "I trust you," she said without hesitation. "All right." I took a deep breath, smoothing her robes down over her hidden uniform. "All right. Lead on." I scanned the others, waited for any complaints, then nodded and rose into the air. "Brielle, Imogen, with me." They approached, hesitated, and then each took hold of one of my arms and rose to perch on one of my feet, their arms wrapping around my waist. Manipura girded my foot, wrapped an arm around each of them in turn, and, holding them close, lifted higher into the air. Livia, I saw, did the same. A moment later, she also climbed into the air, moving with calm, deceptive speed to catch up with me. In a matter of moments, we left Emilias's manor and Isusa behind. My last glimpse of her was her running into the building. No doubt to her own hand. Or rather, she never guessed what I would do. Leaning ever so slightly forward, I put on speed. Soon the rough ground was speeding by below us. The slate rooftops of buildings in the narrow alleys. Figures craning back their heads to point us out as we left behind the ridge and flew out over the roiling river of clouds. The air changed and then grew colder and sharper, as if a constant current of air were funneling along the same trail as the cloud road. But I ignored the chill. Simply held Imogen and Brielle closer, moving ever faster. Flying higher, my gaze locked on the airship. We passed over Urugarab's main walls, sped over the endless courtyards, the barbicans, the laboring slaves and their masters, endless toil to supply the gaze never left the Druid airship. That gorgeous vessel, its hull shaped like a huge ivory blade, filigreed with silver embossing along its forward edge. It glimmered in the dawn light, breathtakingly beautiful, while at once brutal in design and simplicity. A great flying falchion was submarine. "Incoming!" shouted Imogen, and raised her arm to point out dark flecks that were rapidly closing in on us. "Take care of them," he said grimly, not deviating my path. A dozen Marathi soldiers flew toward us, their cloaks streaming, their forms encased in luminous wars. Each held a spear whose head blazed with black fire. They flew in precise formation, a failing cool platinum in the morning sunlight, covering both myself and my companions. over the rushing wind. Ready, Brielle? Let them drop close enough. The Via blew right past us, flying straight up, easily double my speed, her hair streaming behind her. For a second, I could only gape. Then my shock doubled when she released both Emma and Little Meow high above us. Both women began to scream as they fell. Fire raced through my veins, and I pushed myself toward them, not knowing what I could do, how I could catch them. Navia didn't hesitate. She slimmed her ward about her so it fit like a wetsuit, tapered about her frame with subtle perfection, and dove toward the rising phalanx. "She's taking them on by herself," said Imogen, her wonder evident even above the roar of the wind. Down she flew, faster than a diving hawk. A cry of command, and the phalanx ceased its ascent. Formed a line. A second cry, and a burst of black fire flew up to meet Navia, who darted aside, dodging the attacks as if they were of no account. She swept Morgothelium out of its scabbard, all 6 feet of the demon blade gleaming in the dawn light, and punched through the phalanx without slowing. Panicked, their formation losing coherency, only to see Navia raise her palm. Sheer glory did pour forwards were snuffed out in rapid succession, their forms immolated by the attack, and as one, they dropped. 10 corpses fell from the air, spears loosing from their open hands, to plummet toward the city below. "Holy shit," I heard Brielle say, awed. "Heaven fire," said Imogen on my other side, equally awed. "She just..." Emma and Little Meow's screams Dopplered past us as they fell ever faster, plummeting toward the city below. I snapped out of my amazement and dove right after them, only to see Navia swoop in at the last moment and snag them from the sky, catching each with one arm and flying back up to meet us. Her grin was wicked, her eyes gleamed with delight, and as she drew close, both women clutching to her in barely constrained panic, she laughed. "It's been too long since I felt myself." "Damn right," I shouted back, and resumed flying up toward the town. The wind was too loud for me to converse easily with Imogen and Brielle, but I could feel them twisting about in my arms as they stared back at where Navia flew. No doubt they were feeling as stunned as I was. And she just had time to catch. Insanity. Suddenly my grin nearly split my face from ear to ear, and I put on a burst of speed, moving directly toward the green archway. As I drew closer, I saw that it was recessed, with a broad ledge before it affording room for goods to be unloaded. A dozen men and women in imperial blue uniforms stood on guard, their clothing forward, complete with black knee-high boots, tight leather belts, and vaguely Napoleonic jackets. They looked sharp, all of them exhibiting that lazy lethality of a great cat, at ease, watching us approach with lazy disdain. As I landed on the ledge, however, the airship massive just above and behind me, they pushed off walls, stood up from where they crouched in the shadows, and moved to form a block before the gateway. I released Imogen and Brielle just as Navia and the others touched down beside me. "Get ready," I said, and approached. The shadow of a smirk on my lips. "We know who you are," said their leader, a painfully handsome man with golden curls and the musculature of a gymnast. Perhaps just shy of his 30s. He looked completely at home, clad in gleaming full-plate armor, wearing a shield emblazoned with the rose, a real paladin. "We'll ask you to stop, Savior, and approach no closer." "Or what?" I asked, not breaking my stride. "Huh?" asked Emma, a tone uncertain from behind me. The golden-haired man smiled. "We'll be forced to stop you in the name of the Druids." "Bring it," I said, and leaped up, exploding into flight. Manipur's roar momentarily eclipsed everything, as I called on its burning might, flooding my system with strength, impossible speed, and enduring resilience. The guards were elite in truth. They reacted smoothly, without alarm, moving to spread out, wards popping up, drawing weapons as they went. And at that moment, I gave vent to my frustrations. That deep, pulsing anger that had been building within me ever since Shalara had ordered me to pass passed through my 5 triumphs. The resentment I've been cultivating at being manipulated, shepherded, told where to go and what to do. How I've been manipulated at every turn, controlled and abused. I saw Victor's smirk and Nicholas' polished grin. Morgana's seductive sneer. Each and every one of them led me by the nose, treating me like a child. Well, I was a child. With a cry, I unleashed that dark rage, that seething pain that had been building within me, and it burst forth from my chest like a sun-going nova. A dozen 11 bolts ripped through the air, each as thick as my wrist, slashing through the air to wrap around the guards. No vom or priam mantra, no prism techniques, just the raw fury of the 10th Savior coming into its own at last. My reservoir howled as a vortex of magic sank into Muladhara, which drank the torrent of power with endless thirst. It felt for a second as if I were touching once more that crystal network back in Godiel, mainlining the power of the source itself. The entire ledge was thrown into stark blacks and whites, as Nevaeh unleashed her own power, directing a torrent of heaven fire at the city guards, helping me overwhelm my wards. The dozen guards screamed as they were lifted off their feet, boards collapsing, to be hurled by the force of our attacks against the tower's facade. The golden-haired man was the only one to resist the initial onslaught, but even he was driven sliding back on his heels by the force of our attack. He fell into a crouch, his golden sphere warping, his teeth gritted, his eyes wide with sudden panic. He had but a second to look up, for his panic to be replaced with fear. And then I fell upon him like a vengeful angel. Shard flashed down, a double-handed blow, and I brought it crashing down upon his ward, which burst into 100 flashes of light. The guard screamed, was knocked back by the force of released power, staggered away from me, arms windmill. My feet touched the ground. I took a sliding step forward, then front-kicked him just like Sensei Rocco had taught me a lifetime ago, back in the dojo in Iraq. Forward thrust, knee up, all the power coming from the hips, my torso tipping back as I drove my heels straight into the man's chest. The power of Manipura flowed down my leg and exploded into the man, lifting him off his feet and sending him hurtling through the air, through the huge archway, and into the atrium of the massive tower. I didn't break my stride, kept walking forward, climbing the steps to the entrance, not looking to the men and women who groaned about me, smoke coming off their charred red clothing. The airship was connected to the ledge by an umbilical tunnel made out of hinged metal struts and wrapped in thick canvas. "Noah," said Brielle, voice tense, "what are you doing?" "Haven't you figured it out?" asked Little Meow. "We're stealing the airship." "We're what?" But I didn't have the patience to explain or wait. I strode onto the surprisingly sturdy umbilical passageway that connected the airship to the tower. Accordion framing girded the tunnel of canvas, but I floated forth, ward brushing the sides. The door into the airship was open, and I sensed movement within. No time for questions. No time to consider practicalities. I needed to ride this wave of power, this burst of fell intention. I couldn't allow momentum to slack, or doubt to creep in. I floated into what felt like a hangar, scuffed metal flooring covered by hexagonal rubber matting. The kind of huge shelving you'd see at a Costco, where pallets and crates of goods are stacked 10 yards high. There were a dozen lockers against one wall, while a metal staircase led to a broad archway, served by a suspended landing above the lockers. There were more doorways than at ground level. The hangar was empty. I floated to the archway halfway up the wall, and passed through into what looked to be a control room. It was a large chamber. It was clearly a captain's chair set in the center, before a hovering oval of softly swirling but featureless blue light that was affixed to the wall before it. Other seats were placed before consoles, while occult machinery ringed the room, looking like no technology I'd ever seen. At a glance, it looked like something the Aztecs might have cooked up in a fever dream, carved into black rock, with lights pulsing through cracks, all of which was carved and contoured along an alien aesthetic. The captain was a tall, somber-faced man, with the same cerulean blue uniform as the guards. His, however, was marked by epaulets and a crimson sash across his chest. He was awaiting me, hand on the pommel of his blade, his handsome face cast into an expression of disdain. "It does not take much to board a Druak ship," he said, voice ringing with command. "But all who do will pay the price in good time. Our empire can reach any corner of the universe. You shall be hounded all the remaining days of your life, and given ample cause to curse the day you hatched this ludicrous plan." "Unlikely," I said, surveying the consoles and officers gathered before them. The air hung with the activity of the strange machinery. Everyone stared at me with a mixture of terror and hatred. "I am borrowing this ship, but have no intention of keeping it. Do as I ask, and you'll be set free shortly to do what you will. Oppose me, and I will kill you and replace you with someone more fit." The captain sneered. "You could never dream to operate an airship without our assistance, and this you will never have. Your venture has failed before it even began." I loosed a tendril of lightning the width of my finger at the captain. It leaped at him, caused his muscles to seize up, his hair to spring straight. With a cry, he arched his back and fell to the carpeted ground. "He lives," I said, "but if my patience is tried, I shall grow less lenient. Who here is the first mate?" "I am," said an ashen-faced woman. Her black hair shaved close to the scalp along the sides. Her uniform wore the same epaulets, but without the sash. "Congratulations, you're the new captain. Will you do as I ask? I give you my word as the last savior that I have no intention of harming you or any of the crew. I'm keeping this airship once it has served its purpose." She licked her lower lip, calculating, then raised her chin. "To what is this purpose?" "To sail through a portal and appear at the fulcrum of Tantamast." My own companions had begun to filter into the control room at this point, and were fanning out, weapons drawn. "Tantamast," said the first mate. "I know it, yes. That is possible." "And you swear this on swords?" "I do," I said. She considered the fallen captain. "Aisha!" This a hiss from a burly man off to one side. "You cannot agree to this madness. When the captain awakes, he'll have your hide, and the consuls will see you thrown in prison." "Peace, Revan." She'd reached a decision. "I agree. As long as we do as you bid, within the confines of your stipulated itinerary, you will not hurt any of my crew or the Contessa herself." "The Contessa?" I asked. "The name of the airship." A slow nod was all I received. "We are agreed. Will you shake on it?" She stepped toward me, gloved hand held out. Her grip was firm, her shake businesslike. "Very well. Sergeant Holm, please carry the captain off the Contessa." "This is mutiny," said the sergeant, a square-shouldered woman with a mop of unruly blonde hair. "Mutiny is an open rebellion against proper authorities. The captain has been stripped of his, and the ship captured by the enemy. This is therefore not mutiny, but a bid to preserve the Contessa, prevent her from coming to further harm. Now, Sergeant, you have your orders. We serve the source, which makes us, in your eyes, predictably naive and good-natured. You are guaranteed to come out of this unharmed if you do as you're told. But we're in a rush. Dawdle, Sergeant, and I'll personally toss you outside along with your captain." The sergeant tensed, the shadow of a scowl crossing her handsome features, placing my arm upon the board. "How long will it take to teleport to the temple?" "Half an hour," said Aisha. "The Aether engine must be primed, the crookstone ignited, and the hull pressurized. We must then coordinate the transfers and initiate the jump." "Seems complicated," I said. "Let's move away from the Druak Tower while you get that done." "Very well." She sat gingerly upon the captain's chair, then reached out to place her palm on the console before her. Her voice took on the ring of command. "Retract at the umbilicus, cast off lines, and close the bay doors. Maneuvering, initiate primus." "Aye, Captain," said an officer, rising from her seat and hurried past into the hangar. Initiating Primus, said another, placing their palm on the rock console before them and whispering words of power. The lights in the console began to flicker more rapidly. Cut in the gyro repeater, continued Aisha, and the bridge rudder angle indicator. Aye, Captain, said another officer. I moved to one side, joining Brielle and the others, and watched as officers worked intently at their stations. I heard a loud clicking sound coming from the hangar, and then the hollow boom of a large door being swung closed. A moment later, the officer returned. Bay door's closed, Captain. The sergeant chose to remain on the tower with the, Captain. Very well. Aisha didn't bat an eye. All hands up anchor. Maneuvering. Report state of Primus. Gathering magical potential, Captain. We're currently at 25%. Clear for running. Excellent. Ease away, quarter speed, up bubble 3 degrees, climb to an altitude of 100 yards. Affirmative, Captain. The maneuver officer, whatever you call him, channeled a flow of limpid white light into his console, and a rumbling thrum passed through the airship from the front, as if a massive engine had come to life. The floor beneath us tilted a fraction, and with the lightest of jolts, we began to move. I stared out the window. The tower slowly slid past, dropping away as it did so, and the airship rose into the sky, running smoothly and without any hitches. Only the continuous thrum gave away the fact that it was motoring at all. Altitude 75 yards, Captain, said my friend. 80, 85, 90, 95, 100. Set bubble to neutral, said Aisha, and hold air. Setting bubble to neutral. Holding air. For a good minute, the officers worked at their consoles, pouring slender rivulets of magic into the consoles, causing different lights to flare and slink away across the carved stone blocks. Very well, Savior, said Aisha, turning to me when she was satisfied. We are now holding 100 yards above Argosy, which puts us about 40 yards above the apex of the tower. Very well, he said. Continue preparing to jump over the temple. When will you be ready? State of Primus? Asked Aisha. Still gathering potential, Captain. Currently at 30%. We'll need another 25 minutes before we can transfer. Very well, I said, and moved to the closest window to peer outside. The view was stunning. A complete panorama of half the city, the rugged coastline crawling back around and out of sight, and a portion of the temple complex almost level with where we were at the same peak. We'd done it. The airship was ours. Captain, are you needed by your crew for the next 10, 15 minutes? Aisha frowned. I could step away. The process of preparing to transfer would stall, however, once the Primus was fully charged. Then if you have a meeting room in which we can gather, I would appreciate asking you some questions. If what's to come is to go smoothly, I need to understand a little more about this airship and what it can do. Aisha rose to her feet, smoothed down her uniform, and then gave a curt nod to the burly man who'd addressed her before. Revan, you are now the acting first mate. You have the bridge. The man rose to his feet, hesitant, then away into a narrow hall. The walls were paneled with gleaming black walnut wood, the carpet a worn crimson, and everything had the faded grandeur of a turn-of-the-century hotel. The Contessa continued to hum beneath my feet as I followed Aisha down the length of the hall, which ran to the very rear of the airship, then through a doorway into a small study. It was a simple affair, with a bookcase against the wall fronted by glass, behind which tomes were held in place by brackets, and a heavy desk with a swivel chair, both of them bolted in place. A brightly stitched carpet, paintings on the wall depicting alien locales. The second door stood closed. If you wish privacy, this is your best bet, said Aisha, moving to stand to one side, arms crossed over her chest. We are warded against scrying here, and the larger spaces in the Contessa are too easily eavesdropped. Thank you, I said. The roaring within my core had abated. I was continuing to diminish with each passing moment. It felt like a sugar crash. It was leaving me lighted. I felt like I'd touched the third rail there for a moment, and everything seemed washed out and distance coming off that on. Brielle moved to take the swivel chair, while Emma hopped up to sit on the desk support. Little Meow insinuated herself in one corner, while Imogen stepped over to where I stood, and then knelt to place her hand on the carpeted floor. She focused, eyes closed, but then hesitated, pursed her lips in surprise, and rose to her feet. Interesting. Interesting, asked Brielle. Or interesting, very, very bad. Just interesting. There's magic at play. The whole ship radiates it like a bonfire. But there's something subtle about this room. My geomancy was strongly affected. I couldn't capture a good picture of the environment. It felt like trying to read a page held underwater. You've done that? Asked Emma. Not willingly. That would be the protective magic, said Aisha. As I said, we're protected from scrying, and that will include the other magics that surveil. It's standard in key chambers on a Drak ship. You're not the first to try and steal a vessel like this one, but we've done our best to make it so hard to do, it's not generally worth attempting. Because your people will get vengeance for the theft, I said. Exactly. Aisha had a natural presence to her. She was still intimidated by her company when she gave no sign. In your case, we shan't bother. Lilith will no doubt take care of you in short order once you pass into life. Via, who had remained in the doorway, stared at her implacably. Are you one of the faithful? Aisha gave a mean smile. Hardly. But times being what they are, we Drak cannot dictate with whom we shall trade. When I say she'll take care of you, I speak not with pleasure, but reason. Pragmatic of you, said Brielle, to align yourself so neatly with evil to enrich your coffers. Aisha stared stonily at Brielle, but made no reply. I need you to answer a few questions, I said. Can you take us directly into Malkuth? No, said Aisha. An airship cannot transfer into a major sphere. You appeared here, I said. Garak cancelled one. True, that is different. We are welcome here, and have an open invitation to appear when ready to sell goods. Such is not the case with the other major spheres. We could petition Lilith via her Marathi, but somehow I doubt that would help you. But you can open portals to any normal world, I asked. Anywhere else in the universe? Yes, said Aisha. That is the source of our power and wealth. We can trade with any planet. How do you do that? Asked Imogen, tone curious. This Primus of which your officer spoke? My apologies, said Aisha with a hard smile. You're asking after national seats. I and the rest of my crew would die before explaining how we can transfer. Fine, I said, brushing aside the matter with a wave of my hand. Does it always take half an hour to make a jump? No, said Aisha. It depends on the degree to which Primus is primed. Usually, we begin to recover magical potential upon arriving at our destination. We only power down, as we did here. We believe we shall be at dock for some time. Can you get us to the fulcrum in one jump? I don't know where the fulcrum is located. In Tantagrast, as I said. That doesn't help. Do you know anything about this realm to which you are seeking to travel? Just that we need to get there immediately, I said. What else need we know? It is a subterranean realm. We can travel there, but few are the caverns that we can safely appear in. Further, the magical properties of that realm will make even such a jump a challenge, as our sensors will be scrambled. I won't lie. It's a perilous journey. Then why were you so completely willing to undertake it? Asked Imogen. Aisha's smile was cold. Because I understand I have no choice in the matter. True, said Brielle, nodding with judicious approval. Astute. Fine. You get us into Tantagrast, we'll take it from there. I wanted the pace, but fought down the urge. Problem, said Navia. Why would Aisha here take us where we wish to go? What's to stop her from transporting her to a place we could be all day in prison? Aisha raised an eyebrow when I turned inquisitively back to her. That would mean the destruction, no doubt, of the Contessa. Navia's smile was hard. I'm sure Lilith would be willing to cover your damage. Imogen? I asked. Could you compel her to wait for us with Psyche appearing? Assuredly, but I'd rather not. Why not? Asked Navia. That way, we'll be sure of the truth. Imogen leaned forward. We're trying to establish trust here. Noah swore a sacred oath. This relationship only works if we continue to treat each other with respect. Navia snorted and leaned back against the door. Captain? I asked. So strange for you to call me that, said Aisha, her tone turning contemplative. All my life I've coveted the title. And now here it is, and I want nothing to do with it. She paused, studied me with a curious expression. Are you really the 10th Savior? As an answer, I drew shard and rolled its length to incandesce. Golden light radiated across the stone, causing the waxed furniture to gleam and Aisha's eyes to widen. I am the 10th Savior, I said. I was chosen by the Source and passed the 5 trials in the heart of Bastion. Together with my companions, we have traversed Gogia, passed through Tagamaron, and fetched up in Garrett. All that remains for us to accomplish is to pass through the Fulcrum and into Malkuth, where I shall confront and defeat Lilith, setting the universe free of her tyranny. And on instinct, I pulsed some magic into Svadhisthana, like the ghost of a temple, causing the great sunflower petals to open up within my core, and its golden power to insinuate itself in my organs. Aisha blinked, bitterly, and then gave a slow, contemplative nod. To think about it. It's an honor, I suppose. She supposes, said Brielle, rolling her eyes. It's a pleasure to meet you too, I said, allowing a little more Svadhisthana into my words. Can we work together on this, Aisha? Can I trust you to take us to Tanagrast as promised? Aisha tongued the inside of her cheek, glanced at each of us, and then nodded. I understand. And yes, you can trust me. She exhaled as she said these last words. I'm not sure why. It's not in the best interests of the Druach, but maybe. Maybe this is a chance to do something for its own sake. To help the souls. I don't know. I find myself perplexed and entertaining strange emotions, strange ideas. I'll deliver you to Tanagrast. Thank you, I said, and within my core, Svadhisthana began slow to calm, and its great petals folded back down over his face. Imogen was watching me thoughtfully. And that's the plan, I said. We transfer to a large cavern, fly out, and discover where the Fulcrum and Valeria are before heading on to Malkuth. And give Morgana the middle finger as we do so, said Emma with a wicked grin. Brielle's smile was radiant. I can't believe we're going to skip out on Carcosa, Bizul, all those realms. She filled a lock of crimson hair behind her ear and grinned at me. Absolutely brilliant. Will that ruin anything? Our skipping out on those realms? Asked Emma. Everyone turned to Imogen, who shrugged. I don't believe so. The Fulcrum's ability to transport us to Malkuth should not be dependent on our having journeyed along a certain path to reach it. But it will ruin everything for Morgana, said Brielle. Oh, what I wouldn't give to see her face when she learns of our journey. I just asked because, I don't know. Emma bit her lower lip, brow creased in thought. It was a testament to how much the others had come to respect her, that nobody rushed her, how everybody instead waited patiently as she puzzled out her own thoughts. There's been this symmetry to everything we've done. It makes me think of how the ancient Greeks used to respect different numbers, how they had this mystical significance, right? Maybe the number 5 is important to the Source. It wasn't Lilith that mandated you have 5 companions. Maybe conquering these challenges is important in some way. To our path. To our powers. I moved to a portal and stared out through the thick glass at Uragara below. The flowing rivers of cloud, the brutal architecture, The laboring masses in the forges and workshops. At the crenellated walls, the massive portcullises. I stared and felt my resolve harden. No, he said. I hear you, Emma, and appreciate your thoughts. But no, I can't believe the Source wants us to needlessly suffer through trials put before us by Lilith. It wants her to feel it. Whatever we do to destroy her is valid, as long as it doesn't come at the cost of our own goodness and integrity. I turned to face them all, the pilot included. And I feel it in my bones that cutting right to the fulcrum and Valeria is what needs to be done. There's no value in destroying 1,000 more of Lilith's followers, of killing her bosses across these many realms. There will always be more monsters eager to take their place. What we need to do is save Valeria as quickly as possible and get to Malcolm. Nothing else matters. Agreed, said Rio, tone thoughtful. And on some level, it feels like breaking free of Lilith's games represents, I don't know, a maturation of our part. Like we're no longer children being led by a wicked adult, but have grown and can now forge our own path. I agree, for what it's worth, said Lumia, reaching up to adjust her cat mask. It symbolizes the move from passivity to dynamism. This feels right. Then there you have it, I said, my smile hard. Let's get to Tantagrast and find Valeria. Aisha, whenever you're ready, tell us. See to it. Aisha gave me a shallow bow and left the room. The door closed, and my companions shifted about, not quite relaxing now that she was gone, but lowering their guard afresh. Shouldn't one of us watch them? Asked Imogen, rising to her feet. Perhaps I'll stay on the bridge with Aisha. I'll do it, said Navia, pushing off the wall and crossing the room with deadly grace. Such was the authority in Navia's voice that Imogen simply sat back down as the others slipped out after the captain. When the door closed, Brielle crossed her arms and leveled a hard gaze right at me. All right, time to tell us what the hell happened while you two were gone. She cut through those flying Marathi like they were children, said Imogen. That's... And the way she dropped Little Meow and me, she had to have known she'd kill them all in time to catch us again, said Emma. Right? She had to have known. That wasn't a gamble, was it? I don't think it was, said Little Meow. Though I'll admit the experience was rather unpleasant. While it lasted. She's integrated herself, I said. It's hard to explain, but we stayed with her mother and grandmother. Nice people? Asked Emma wryly. Lovely. Her mother ended up helping us. We went into Navia's sanctum, and she freed her imprisoned demon. Everyone came forward, and it was... yeah, I don't know how to put it into words, but in the end, Navia managed to find peace, accepted her darkness, melded with the demon, and conquered it. And now she can kill dozens of elite Marathi by herself? Asked Brielle. She always could, I replied. I don't think any of us appreciate how powerful she's always been. But now, her powers are back. And, yeah, the nervous tremble of excitement rippled through me. Lilith must be freaking out. As long as she's on our side, said Brielle. Lilith? Asked Emma, confused. Brielle scowled. So, Navia. She is, I said. I think our challenge now is going to be keeping up with her, more than anything else. I guess we can follow the trail of dead bodies, said Imogen. If we get left too far behind. I won't be left behind, said Brielle, defiant. You're going to have to start working out then, said Imogen teasingly. I think you've been coasting of late. Brielle stuck her tongue out. A rumble passed through the airship. Looking back out the portal, I saw the wisps of clouds around us shudder, as if an invisible table they'd been resting on had suddenly been violent. What the fuck? I moved to the far left to peer right, then the other side, peering back left. The clouds were acting weird. They shuddered again, and began to stream together in a large circle, like water funneling down a drain. Spinning around our ship, faster and faster, a funnel forming below them that wove its way down to the base of the tower. I peered as best I could, the others gathering around me. Rhymes, perhaps? Asked Imogen. A side effect of the engine gathering energy? No, I said, as a figure rose into view, her black-haired in an undulating wave, arms extended, eyes burning with black smoke. Her voluptuous frame was clad in little more than purple robes that fluttered about her, revealing bare hips, an expanse of thigh, and knee-high boots. Fuck, I said. Get ready. Morgana's coming out to play. Chapter 16.